The History of Freemasonry by Albert Mackey. The contents of Volume 2 will cover the astrologers and the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons, the Pythagoreans and the Freemasons, but will focus on the Druids, Essenes, and Pythagoreans, as well as their relation to the workers of Solomon. What is it that ancient man had in him that so inspired him to create initiatic orders, to pursue mysteries, and to delve deeper into the study of alchemy and the heavenly bodies? Mackey goes on to say about the astrologers and the Freemasons that had the common man not had such a need for the divination of the heavenly bodies, that astronomers themselves would go without bread. Many of the manuscripts contributing to the legend of the craft contain hints of ancient man's connection with the mystery schools of not only Babylon and Egypt, but the Essenes, the Druids, the Pythagoreans, the astronomers, and the architects of Rome. And as with Masonry, each of these mystery schools embodied a teaching and practice all to their own. Much like Masonic allegory, Plato had written the Republic, Sir Thomas More his Utopia, which would all give rise to the Commonwealth model, and of course to Lord Bacon's New Atlantis. Along with his philosophical and scientific methodological insights, as well as his high station within the royal court, near to the throne of King James, where his counsel would be whispered alongside of notorious figures like John Dee. While the truth behind the myths that lead to many of the legends, such as the Pythagoreans and the Rosicrucians, it is unclear as to what exactly these men were searching for. But what is clear, each of which carried out initiations on novitiates to impress upon them the most important truths of their times. And as such, tradition would give rise to the connections between many of these orders and Freemasonry. Rosicrucianism is no different. Like the Pythagoreans and the Egyptians, the Rosicrucians extract vows of silence and secrecy. And as was custom in ancient times, many of the novitiates would be forced to endure several years before they were enabled to climb to the exalted ranks of master. While there is commonality between rituals, symbolism, mannerisms, modes of recognition, and philosophical ideology, there is no clear and direct relation between many of these mythological origins and stories. While it is clear that there has always been a Christian relation to the Rosicrucians, it is evident that there has also, too, been Hermetic philosophy intertwined into both the Rosicrucian and Freemasonic orders. As such, Mackey and several other Masonic scholars suggest that this lends truth to the Mr. Halliwell's manuscript. The Pythagorean connection to Freemasonry is more obscure. Well, what is common to the Pythagoreans and the Freemasons is that both, at the time of their inception, needed to be veiled in secrecy to evade the dogmatic powers of the day. But while it is clear that Mr. Halliwell's poem and the Cook manuscript are the only to mention the legend of the craft, as far as being in connection with the legend of the guild, and specifically Pythagoras, it is likely due to the author's possession of the Polychronicon. Thus, no further mention in any of the Masonic manuscripts lists Pythagoras or the Pythagoreans. But it is an interesting note to think about how that order was founded. The astute historian of the mystery schools can't help but see the common overtones of geometry being intertwined throughout all of the ancient mysteries. For the next part, we must take the volume a little bit out of sequence. The last of the operative versions of ancient mystery schools has to do with the Roman colleges. The Romans and their colleges, like each of their ancient predecessors, found necessary to establish schools and guilds in order to cater to the copious amounts of handicraftsmen that were highly skilled, but in order to be sought out for their particular skills, it was important that they were initiated into different schools of thought, able to prove their station in order to build their work and receive commensurate compensation. The rise and fall of the Roman colleges would be emblematic of the shift from operative masonry and its mythological roots into the speculative age. However, before transitioning to the speculative front, it is important that we step back and revisit the theological influences that befell Freemasonry. It has been long debated among scholars and Masonic researchers alike the exact roots of Freemasonry, and while it's apparent that it does draw roots from ancient Babylon, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, Egypt, the Essenes, and others, it is important to note that some of these spiritual influences were involved in the genesis of Freemasonry. While Freemasonry is non-denominational and is not specifically a religion, it is imbued and supports the principles of a healthy spiritual development. As such, it is no mystery that when looking back into the mythological and legendary roots of the craft, we see that mysterious orders would be the most prominent and influential in the creation of the Freemasonic allegorical system. Much like the Druids, the Essenes, and all the flair and zeal for the initiatic order that they upheld. Relating to the mysteries of the Essenes and their connection to Freemasonry, it is important to note that they too were an initiatic order. Mackey points out that the novitiate would be required to make a solemn oath, and that he would never divulge any of the mysteries of the order, that he would make no innovations on the doctrine of the society, and that he would continue in that honorable course of piety and virtue which he had begun to pursue. Like the Freemasons, in their time, much speculation was put onto them as to why women were not allowed into the order. These same concerns are still plaguing Freemasonry today. After the introduction of early French Masonry, early British Masonry, and early Anglo-Saxon Masonry and guilds, Albert Mackey concludes Volume 2. I look forward to seeing you all again on the other side in Volume 3. This is Inside Knowledge.